frustrate him. He feels punished. He feels rejected. But his wife isn't thinking about his feelings at that moment. She's only thinking about how she feels. And so she tries to go back to bed, but if she couldn't sleep before, she's going to have even more difficulty sleeping now. And so as she's in bed, thinking through what just happened in this mini kind of bedroom conflict between a husband and a wife, she thinks to herself, maybe I was unfair to him. I mean, he really does love me, and I really do love him. And so she gets up and she returns to the door in the second part of verse 4. My heart began to pound for him. I arose to open for my lover, and my hands dripped with myrrh, my fingers with flowing myrrh on the handles of the lock. I opened for my lover, but my lover had left. He was gone. So what happened here? Well, he stormed off. He took off. He left. And women, you need to know that when a husband finds himself in a situation similar to what this husband finds himself in our text, in Song of Songs chapter 5, he's not going to fight, right? Why? Because he knows he can't win. If he wins the argument, he loses. And if he loses the argument, he loses. And so her husband here takes off and doesn't fight. Instead, he's embarrassed and he's humiliated and he walks away. Now, there's some debate among Bible scholars about whether what happens next in the next verse is a picture of the wife awake and that she's actually doing this. She's actually running through the castle in the middle of the night trying to find her husband, calling out for her husband, or whether she actually goes back to sleep and she's dreaming and has a nightmare, and she's describing a nightmare scene here. I'll read it, and you can decide what you think. This is Song of Songs, chapter 5, verse 6b. Either way, you're going to sense her regret over spurning her husband's earlier advances, as well as her desperation to find her loved one and to work things out. Chapter 5, verse 6. My heart sank at his departure. I looked for him, but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. They beat me. They bruised me. They took away my cloak. Those watchmen of the walls. So again, whether it's a nightmare or whether this actually happened to her, this verse underscores that she has great anguish at being separated from her husband. She has great anguish over the result of this marriage little tiff that they've had. And at daybreak the next morning, she finds her friends and she tells them what went on during the night before. Chapter 5, verse 8. O daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my lover, what will you tell him? Tell him I am faint with love. Now, if you've been coming to this series, you know that's not the first time she refers to her friends. One of the qualities about this woman in Song of Songs that we esteemed was the fact that she had always surrounded herself with friends, people who were virtuous, people who looked out for her best interests. And so she goes to her friends again, and she talks through what happened the night before about with her husband. And her friends reply in verse 9, how is your beloved better than others, most beautiful of women? How is your beloved better than others that you charge us so? So basically what they're saying is, well, why did you reject him? I mean, is he bad? Is he abusive? Was he mean to you? Was he harsh? What did he do? And the woman speaks, and essentially she tells her friends, no, he didn't do anything bad. He's a great guy. I rejected him. I changed my mind. I didn't have a solid reason, and now I regret it. And I got to find him. And ladies, I would say, just as a pastoral aside, there are legitimate reasons to reject a spouse. Certainly if your spouse is violent or abusive and so forth. But clearly in this instance, in Song of Songs, that's not the case. Right? She spurned her spouse, and then she changed her mind, and he was gone. He'd left in frustration. And so she goes on to describe her husband. They're like, okay, well, if we're going to search for him, it's going to require time and energy We don't want him to be an abusive guy. We don't want him to be a guy that's going to hurt you. How do we know he's noble in character and worth this? And so she picks up at verse 10. My lover is radiant and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His head is purest gold. His hair is wavy and black as a raven. His eyes are like doves by the water streams, washed in milk, mounted like jewels. His cheeks are like beds of spice, yielding perfume. His lips are like lilies dripping with myrrh. You get the idea, she's attracted to him, right? His arms are rods of gold set with chrysolite. His body is like polished ivory decorated with sapphires. My husband works out, he lifts weights. His legs are pillars of marble set on bases of pure gold. He even does squats. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as its cedars. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. And as she's telling her friends about what a great guy her husband is, it's like she comes to the realization that she didn't have a good reason to reject him, and that, like so many marital arguments, it was a dumb thing. It didn't have to happen that way. And I think sometimes we do dumb things in marriage. Sometimes I do dumb things in marriage. We do things without thinking. Like, why did you reject your spouse? I don't know. I just wasn't in the mood. So this woman concludes her catalog of her husband's attributes with this beautiful sentence in verse 16. This is my lover, this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. And when the friends hear this, they commit in the next verse, in chapter 6, verse 1, to help her find her husband. So what's the issue here in this passage that we've looked at, this chapter 5 through verse 1 of chapter 6? Well, the issue in this particular chapter is the wife, and she's being selfish. Though, I should mention, it could just as well have been the husband. She's only thinking about herself and what she wants at a particular moment, or more accurately, what she doesn't want. Essentially, what Song of Songs chapter 5 does is it invites us in to a bedroom conflict between a husband and a wife. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, the Bible is the most honest book ever written. It's the most honest book ever written, which is why we encourage you at River City to read it, to study it, to go back to it, and to join us on Sundays so that we can learn what guidance God gives us through His Word and through His Spirit. So, that bedroom conflicts only occurred 3,000 years ago. But unfortunately, this is something that couples still have to address. Remember, we humans are inherently selfish beings. It was true then, and it's doubly true for me, and I would say pretty confidently it's doubly true for you as well, because we are born and raised in a consumer culture. We were born in a my way, right away, microwave happiness culture. So we're selfish people. I can think of 4 ways that people get selfish in the bedroom. We're talking husbands and wives here. Number 1, you just deny your spouse. Your spouse is like, what do you say, honey? No. Next night. What do you say, honey? No. And sometimes the denial is more subtle than that. You get into bed, you turn your back, and you pretend that you're sleeping. You just deny your spouse. Number 2 is you don't initiate. You always leave it to your spouse to initiate. You always leave it to your spouse to be the one to take the risk of rejection. You don't initiate. Number 3, you do as little as possible. Your spouse says, hey, can we be intimate? And you say, all right, but hurry it up. I'm really not into it tonight. No one can relate to this. Number 4, sabotage. Bedtime is coming, and so you make some insensitive comment that you know is guaranteed to put him or her out of the mood.